Good evening, everybody. Happy Tuesday or the end of Tuesday, especially depending on where you're at. So yeah, we're doing again another episode on child abuse, and I'm not sure if my internet is going out or not. I hope not. I'm hoping it stays in there. So today we're going to be talking about child sexual abuse in this episode. And we're going to be covering, several topics as far as child abuse goes as I am unfolding in this whole episode on, child abuse and then, what it looks like for adults who are integrating themselves into society who have been abused. But there's just so much material that we need to cover, and I'm just going to cover little sections at a time, not to be overwhelming to anybody. So child abuse, according to emedicinehealth.com, child abuse is defined as a variety of abnormal behaviors directed against children. It can take many forms. Child abuse may be in the form of sexual abuse, pedophilia, physical abuse, child neglect, emotional neglect, and abuse. And to go a little bit further into it now, I want to, between child sexual abuse and sexual abuse, there's obviously some similarities here. Sexual abuse, and this is through the Wikipedia. Sexual abuse is also referred to as molestation, is abusive sexual behavior by one person upon another. It is often perpetrated using force by taking advantage of another. Now, child sexual abuse is very similar to that, but it has a little bit more of a definition and explanation to it because what can be done with a child a lot of times is not done with a grown up per se. So they have a little bit more of there's a little bit more of a capacity to groom a child, if you will. And I'll just kind of read it. And this again is from Wikipedia. So child sexual abuse, also called child molestation, is a form of child abuse in which an adult or older adolescent. I just noticed, you guys, I'm so sorry. I have my microphone up here by me. Um, but it's a form of child abuse in which an adult or older adolescent uses a child for sexual stimulation. Forms of child sexual abuse is included engaging in sexual activities with the child, whether by asking or pressuring or by other means. Indecent exposure, child grooming, and child sexual exploitation, including using a child to produce like child pornography. So, and I don't have my comments up in here. Okay, so that is also from the Wikipedia. So that just kind of gives you really, actually, a very detailed, I think, explanation on what child sexual abuse is. And we need to realize that this is happening today. This is happening. This has been happening since the beginning of time. All right, this is not a new problem. This is an old problem. It's just we got to get to the point where society has decided that it's had enough of this, because we have prominent figures, actors and actresses, and Hollywood figures, and also there's so many of them in our political system that's running our country, that's making decisions for our country, who's in all of this, who is doing all of this. And so we really need to be aware of what is going on, because if it's not being talked about on a regular basis and it's not being really exposed for what it is, then it's not going to change. And we're going to continue to have these pedophilia rings and missing children, and children just being abused and not being able to function well in society as they grow up to be an adult. And I'm sorry, I got a small bloody nose. I apologize. Okay. So let's go on a little bit more here. Now, from the Counseling Org, Disaster and Trauma, Sexual Abuse. Long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse is the name of the article. Now, here's what they were stating. The majority of sexual abuse happens in childhood, with incest being the most common form. And I hope that's not news to you guys. This most certainly does happen. I know for a fact this is prominent in our societies, all over the world. It's not just one society or one culture. This is all over. Childhood sexual self-life, eating disorders, somatic concerns, anxiety, dissociative patterns, repression, denial, sexual problems, and relationship problems. Depression has been found to be the most common long-term symptoms among survivors. And that's, again, I got this off of the counseling, www.counseling.org, for long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse. And I thought that was just such a great way to kind of start this. So you guys aren't thinking that, this lady is just pulling things out of her head. No, there's been studies done on this. There's professional, well-written articles out there on the long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse. But what we have to really realize, you guys, is that we need to start talking about this. Even if you were a victim, okay? If we don't start talking about it, we're never going to end this cycle. We need to be loud about it. This is not something for us to really be ashamed of. It's just something for us to be proactive and stop the consequences of the abuse, and just stop the abuse. It shouldn't be tolerated anymore in our society, and this is globally. So one of the things I want to talk a little bit, about the damage of sexual abuse. And one of the damages, it hurts our root chakra. There's other chakras that are affected by this also, but definitely the root chakra. And the reason why I'm really pinpointing down on that chakra today is because this when you have found that somebody has been in some type of sexual abuse when they were children, there's a certain way that you can tell that they feel like they don't fit into society or deserve anything from the universe or what society has to give them. So, like, they will end up being a little less um, abundant financially. Definitely, it will hurt in their money because they don't feel like they deserve that money. It really does just damage on such an integral part of the soul, that level of just shame and guilt, and I am undeserving, I am not, I'm less than a human being. And that is what sexual abuse makes a person feel like they're less than a human being. It also makes them feel like they don't have a right to protect themselves. They do not have a right to protect their children, that they are here to be abused. And this is really a big, huge thing. So when children are sexually abused, they really do. They will let other people abuse them on a continuous basis because that's what they've been trained to do. Okay, this is how traumatic child abuse is. It literally psychologically damages the individual, where they will let somebody abuse them because they really feel like that's what they deserve and that's why they're here on earth for. So I am telling you guys, we need to speak out against child abuse. We need to be proactive. Survivors of child abuse, well, they're really not survivors, but people who have been abused sexually when they were children will actually pick out people that will make them feel violated and shameful. This is a very, very key feeling to people who have been abused when they were children, sexually abused especially, shame and violated. So they will seek out those circumstances and those people that will continue to abuse them in that type of horrific way. Now, it will impact our money making abilities, because I tell you what, if our root chakra is not functioning well, if we don't feel like we deserve it, then we will pick low end jobs. We will not receive and take money from people because, well, we're less than human. We don't deserve it. This is the kind of psychological impact this type of abuse has on people. And this is what it looks like when you see an adult turning away money or just feeling that they're unworthy or letting people abuse them. You have to step back and think, not, oh my God, what's wrong with that person? You have to step back and think, I wonder what that person has gone through. Okay, because that's not normal human behavior. Another thing that it really impacts is us feeling safe in the world. And what does this mean or look like? You guys, this really means that when we are out, like in a party or in some type of social gathering, that this person that you may see or what you may feel like, and it's not so much hyperventilating, it's just like you're foreign, like you're an alien, like, why am I doing here? And I don't belong here because I don't belong with humans. Okay, it's not so much this social club or that social club, but you literally start thinking, or you believe that you don't belong, that you're abnormal, that you don't belong in the mix of any type of community, party, social gathering, bar, or what have you. That's what it looks like. You're just not safe when you're riding the bus. You have that same feeling. It doesn't have to be a social gathering or at work. You feel like the one party out of everybody else, like you just don't belong and you don't fit in. And it's just so difficult. Can you imagine going into a situation like this? Can you imagine? And you're sitting there, and it's not that you're not valuable. They are very valuable. We are very, very valuable. But to think that you're an alien, that you don't belong in there. Can you imagine all the physical symptoms that are going to come out? not just depression, but hyperventilating, the sweats. I have a Facebook here, user that says sorry about that, extreme anxiety. Absolutely. And it's not that the anxiety, it's you're being triggered that's causing the anxiety. And people just don't realize sometimes that they are working right next to somebody who's been severely abused, who's been sexually abused. And they don't have the coping skills or the understanding in how to work with that person. But if we don't start speaking up about this stuff is real, it's happening today, it's been happening for years and years, it's happened to our mothers, it's happened to our grandmothers, it's happened to children for many, many years. And I know we have this big pound Save the Children right now, but these sex trafficking rings that they're busting, and I'm so happy that they are, don't get me wrong on this, but here's the point. If it's pound Save the Children, oh my gosh, they've already been abused. This is tragic. This is why we must start speaking up, and we better start doing something now and not hiding this under the rug anymore. We were taught, even I was taught, to hide it under the rug. I still have relatives today that is around somebody who has abused many children, abused their sister sexually, all right? And they're just hiding it under the rug still. And I'm saying, let's step up and stop this right now. Enough of people abused, enough of the children having to be sexually exploited and abused. Just enough of it. We need to gather in as a society. Another thing, as I said, it really impacts the feelings that we have the right to be safe. Every single one of us have the right to be safe. And it's really, really difficult when we're walking around in society when we don't feel like we belong. But now on top of it, we don't feel safe because we don't know which person is going to abuse us and hurt us. And on top of it, we are feeling this way, we're feeling unsafe, and we think in our mind that we don't have the right to be safe, that we don't have the right to be protected. So you see, this is like building blocks, one layer on the next layer, on the next layer, on the next layer. So this really does to be able to really understand and getting down to that deep psychology, but really reconnecting ourselves with God, reconnecting ourselves with the universe, our higher self, is one of the most important things when this has been done to a child and an adult trying to function out in the world. That reconnection is the biggest key, but getting there is not that easy. Sometimes we're just in that hypnotic rhythm, that hypnotic pattern that keeps us there, and we don't really realize it. We're blinded to it. And so this is not something for anybody to push blame on, or like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I lived like that for so many years. Well, it wasn't your fault. You were trained, you were in a hypnotic rhythm. And so breaking that rhythm is the most important thing. And then you can really reconnect with your higher self, and you can reconnect with God. And the other really key thing here for this type of abuse, child sexual abuse is what I'm talking about today, is impact the feeling of belonging to the community and our family. And I tell you what, child sexual abuse on a child, when they are trying to function as adults, will tear the family apart because of the shame, the guilt. It's such a horrible feeling, and trying to come together with your siblings who have also been abused, and you just don't feel like you belong in the family because the family has let this happen to you. In your mind, this is what has happened. So it's really difficult to maintain and establish any type of healthy relationship, let alone with your own family, because most of the time, that's where the abuse happened. And I just mentioned that up here. Who was it? It was the, oh yes, counseling.org. The majority of sexual abuse happens in childhood, with incest being the most common form. So we really need to embrace each other and acknowledge, that maybe the person next to you has been abused, that we have been abused when we were younger, or your siblings, or just whomever. And I'm really hoping that's staying on. I'm having some internet problems still, but it's time that if we don't start speaking up and we don't start educating, I'm not talking about going out there and just screaming it and being loud and being illogical about it. We got to stay logical, all right? Because children's lives are depending on it, and other people's lives are actually also depending upon this. We need to be educated. We need to speak logically about it, but we need to be also proactive, and we need to take the steps, not just talk, but we need to take the steps to make it stop. And what does that look like? And as I am going further into these episodes, and I do have my lifehouseproject.org that's coming, that's going to be launching here within the next week or two, that's going to be addressing the proactive steps in saving children from pedophile rings, sex trafficking, and also child exploitation, child abuse, and also women. So the lifehouseproject.org, you can go and look at that if you want. I do have the website already up. It's www.lifehouseproject.org, which is going to, as I said, the mission is around children and women. And you will see that once you get into the web page. But anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to cover. I wanted to cover the root chakra and just what it looks like in society when a child has been sexually abused, and what it feels like to them. And it's extremely difficult. But again, I'm going to rattle off one more time and state what the psychological damages that are done to that child. So we're talking about depression, guilt, shame, self-blame, eating disorders, somatic concerns, anxiety, dissociative patterns, repression, denial, sexual problems, and relationship problems, with depression being found as the number one most common long-term symptom among survivors. You guys, thank you for joining. Listen to this as much as you want to, but I'm going to get a little bit heavier, a little bit deeper, and really bring out a lot more on all of this, because as I said, we need to start talking about it, be comfortable talking about it, and really start educating each other and stand together in being proactive against child abuse. So you guys, thank you so much for joining me this Tuesday evening, and I will see you next Tuesday for another episode of Understanding Child Abuse and what it looks like when they're trying to function in society as an adult. So thank you so much for showing up. Namaste.